Hind and welcome to Dev Talks. This is Aadi. As you all can see, I have with me a distinguished panel. Lieutenant General Dushyant Singh and Major General Sudhakar ji, both of them experts in the security of this great nation of ours. Today is a very interesting question that I've actually posed to them. You know, there are a lot of talks about what's happening in Pakistan. They put out a national security policy, they give out contradictory views, and so on and so forth. And a lot of us watching this show, let me put it right now at the beginning, would agree to the fact that it's difficult for Pakistan to actually change its ways. Having said that, we'd like to still ask that question: what is wrong with Pakistan and how can it actually improve if it really does want to? It's a big, big if, but let's just figure out and see, is that situation of an improvement within that country even a realm of reality? So as I said, I'm going to ask some questions to both the generals, and let us see how this discussion takes forward. We are going to look at various different aspects which are operating within Pakistan, the civil society, the military, its foreign relations, and so on and so forth. So it'll be an interesting conversation. Thank you, sirs, for joining me for this discussion. And let's see whether the Pakistan as a country or as an establishment has the capacity to improve itself. General Dushyant sir, I'd like to begin with you, sir. There is an understanding within Pakistan itself today that says that, yaar, ye chalega nahi. Look, whatever we are doing, it's not going to work. And their media says it openly. Their intellectuals are saying it openly. But however bleak this thought process might be, it is still there. You know, to open and give a baseline to the discussion, so may I request you to give us your thoughts on this particular realization that the Pakistanis have today? As a matter of fact, I was watching something today morning where they're saying India ke saath trade, though it's an importance. We will not be able to sustain ourselves if we don't do this. Is this a realization that they've crossed a red line, which, returning from which is difficult today?
Well, thank you, Aadi, for having invited us over for another interesting discussion on Pakistan. I do realize that Pakistan is a very, very beaten subject, and most of the security arena has been discussing this for the past few years in great detail. So we are not going to touch on issues which are already known to most of us. I would straight away launch into answering your question whether the realization that Pakistan needs to change its ways or mend its form of governance and administration, has it generated enough steam? So the first and the most important question is, for any change to occur, there has to be a breaking point. Has Pakistan reached that breaking point to escape from its current trend to go towards a totally different trend and chart out for itself a route which will lead it towards progress, more inclusiveness in international relations? I have my serious doubts. I don't think they have reached that. We call it as a breaking point, so as to achieve that kind of state. But having said that, let me tell you certain things which most of the people have still not told you. In 2007, when I was doing international course in the US, the Pakistan was ninth or eighth, hovering around eighth or ninth in the fragile state index. Okay? Ninth. India is around 65th. Despite all the facts which we keep mentioning going wrong with Pakistan, how has it improved its situation? Pakistan was minus as far as its GDP was concerned few years back. Today it is growing at around 4%. There is a bounce back in the GDP of Pakistan. All this is not being taken into account by us. Yes, they are under tremendous pressure. They are under tremendous internal pressure, which for me in South Asia, every country is. Tell me which country is not undergoing internal upheavals. You take Nepal, you take Bangladesh, you take Myanmar, you take India. Nobody talks about them. So I think Pakistan feels internally that their existing set of governance rules, administration is good enough to take it across the and take it further or take it forward. Remember, they have two very strong lifelines. First is China. Chinese are their all-weather friends, despite the fact that Pakistan is now being touted as going to become a vassal state. That is one. The second is the geostrategic location of Pakistan. It somehow forces the three superpowers. Now I am calling them the three superpowers because US, Russia, China, and I would also include EU as a bloc. All these four have their interest in retaining Pakistan as it is because they would like to control the terrorism which might emanate from this region, which is Afghanistan. So they will try to keep Pakistan afloat. And this is exactly the reason why the IMF keeps on releasing every year the 1.6 billion out of the 6 billion tranche. Now, if this much of money is flowing back into Pakistan, whether through grants, whether through loans, whether through begging from Saudi Arabia or United Arab Emirates, its economy is it's going on, it's going forward. And I say that unless the economy breaks, I think the people will not break. People will not rise to contest the current set of people, mullah, military, and the politicians who are ruling this country. I think Sudhakar can add a little more on this, what I have said.
Uh, Thank you, sir. Thank you, Adi, for inviting me to your channel. And once again, compliments for bringing out very quality products. And today's topic, it indicates that it is not a new normal, nor is it an abnormal subject, but it's beyond normal subject that we are going in and trying to find a solution and way forward. On behalf of Pakistan, I suppose that is what my understanding is. And there is no better speaker than General Dushyant. He is an expert, domain expert in many aspects, many issues. And Pakistan, perhaps I would rate as his core subject. Whatever he has said, well, it will cast like a candle before the sunlight if I open my mouth. But still, I'll try and make some value addition. I was talking to somebody day before yesterday and about the issue of Pakistan in relation to what is happening along the Durand line and in relation to this couple of attacks which have taken place, particularly the Noshki and Panjgur. And in relation to these attacks which have taken place in Balochistan and the response matrix from the Balochi rebels or the Balochi Liberation Front, no one other than the Interior Minister of Pakistan, Sheikh Rashid, has gone to say in the media that the attacks by terrorist groups have increased by 35% since the Taliban came to power in Afghanistan. One. Second, one statement which he did not come out loud and clearly, but indirectly he said, and his also the peer group around they mentioned that Pakistan had started accusing the Haqqani network of switching allegiance to Delhi from Rawalpindi. These are very important statements. I'm sure, Adi, you would have straight away put your finger on these articulations. Also, another statement came out that Kabul government neither recognizes nor has any presence in the United Nations despite the best effort. Oslo meeting also hasn't yielded any kind of tangible takeaway. By and by, I would only reinforce what General Dushyant has said. But importantly, this gentleman, this lady, every one of us know her. She keeps coming to Army War College to give talk, Christian Fair, and a lot of her books have come out. One important thing she has been underscoring that there are two types of Pakistan even under the current situation. But I would like to, before I repeat what she had said, I would like to stress the fact that what General Dushyant has said, that the economy of Pakistan, unless it is put under excessive stress, unless it collapses, it will be very difficult for Pakistan to achieve any kind of a break point. Contradictions are alive. Contrary to our perception, to a layman's understanding, many of us may not know or understand as to how the economy is actually started bouncing back. The economy in Pakistan, surprisingly, is actually moving between 3.5 to 4% of GDP growth. That is a real surprise when they are going around the world with a begging ball. So, two Pakistans, when I got discussing with the lady, she said there is a formal Pakistan state, which General Dushyant has heard her a number of times in Army War College. And the second is the Pakistan military jihadi complex. These are the two types of states. In between, there is a state known as the establishment. So the formal Pakistan state, which is called the normal Pakistan, wherein the peace and prosperity of its citizens are being sought by one and all. There is a pro-democratic party or the movement which is picked up momentum, but it's not coming out loudly because it is being suppressed by the Pakistani media. The DGISPR has taken out very stringent steps to suppress all their activities. Many of the reputed journalists and leaders are being put behind bars. There is excessive hijacking of all these people. Unaccountable missing people are rising by the day. The second group of Pakistan military jihadi complex, comprising of military, militant, radical. This is where the real establishment is hiding. To answer the question which Aadi, you had alluded few days back, what is this establishment? Who selects the army chief and who elects? In any case, the Prime Minister of Pakistan is not being elected these days. He is being selected by the establishment. So this is where the answer actually lies. So having said all this, I would like to also go to the second round once we come back to crystallize my recommendations as to what are the, speaking on behalf of Pakistan, what is it that they should be doing presently to get out of this mess they have created for themselves. It's a labyrinth which has got no way out. It is a snake and ladders game which they have created for themselves. Unfortunately, they are landing up at the mouth of the snake every time they climb up. So that's all I say. And back to you, Aadi, and back to General Dushyant.
Thank you, sir, for that. As a matter of fact, this question came up the last time me and General Dushyant actually had a conversation where sir had asked that, it's funny to realize who is actually selecting the entire process, who's the establishment altogether, and that question is, everybody has their own theory about it, but I guess pinpointing one particular segment will be very difficult because this entire thing is so complex, where the money comes from, and it is just so complex. A lot of people in Pakistan believe that the IMF is paying for the generals' lifestyles. Well, it's something that open to debate. So when I mentioned the generals, one of the, and this is towards you, General Sudhakar, when I mentioned the generals, the biggest thing that comes out is the army, which is the Fauj or the establishment, or however you want to put it. Their legitimacy in Pakistan today is because of the threat from India, the so-called threat from India. I mean, today they've got another side of their country where there is some threat, but the legitimacy of having such a large army. And I'd like you to kind of look back to 1971 when we returned 93,000 soldiers to Pakistan that was reduced by 1/3 in its size, and the army was pretty much not in equivalence of the size of the country. And they still maintained that army. I mean, they went from Bangladesh straight into Balochistan and did unspeakable things there. Coming back to my questions, how does a country whose army which controls a nation, legitimize its demand for normalcy when the entire base for that army is the threat from India? It's a story in contradiction. How do you look at it, sir?
Well, okay. To answer this question in specific, I would like to take our viewers a little back in time. The very creation of Pakistan was, in a couple of channels, I have used it as the birth of Pakistan was a genetic disorder, and the genetic disorder has got no solution. There is no surgery. It's not a malignant tumor that you can remove it. It's genetic disorder. So why am I saying this is, firstly, the creation, the concept of Pakistan, the idea of Pakistan was based on religion, as we all know. And more than the religion, one of the central issue was the language. Today in Pakistan, even if Punjabis speak in Punjabi language, do you know that in their parliament, the statements are expunged? I didn't know about this. I was reading in one of the books. They have to be, you know it. So, so why am I bringing out this aspect is the very leadership who had actually conceived the idea of Pakistan. Nobody other than, of course, we had a founding father, the idea who generated the idea of Pakistan prior to Jinnah. But Jinnah, we take him as a kind of a demigod for the creation of Pakistan. This gentleman, he passed away in the year 1948, if I remember correctly. He passed away because of the cancer. And soon after that, Liaquat Ali Khan, who was the first prime minister, he was assassinated sometime in 1951, September 11th of September or so. So you just visualize a nation has been created based on the religion and on the linguistic paradigm. The leadership which had conceived the idea of Pakistan, they also pass away. Look at the vacuum which was created. In absence of Jinnah and Liaquat Ali Khan, it is horrifying to believe that how could Pakistan last so long? It should have actually got dissolved in the global order. So one. Secondly, it is by virtue of this particular vacuum in leadership and the lack of direction by the leadership, General Ayub Khan came into prominence. And that is how the constitutional coup, which they call 1953-54, which gave a kind of a caveat to army to justify their intervention on the paradigm of law and order. That in order to ensure law and order in the governance by the civil government, they are at liberty to come in. And that is how the military regimes or the martial law has been coming. It has already come thrice or four times, 1958, 77, 99. Likewise, one is round the corner, you never know, except for there is a regulation of the parliamentary clause which has been enacted in the year 2011, if I'm not wrong, which debarred the military to come in and execute or promulgate the martial law. There is a provision, details of which I don't have, but offhand I remember there is a thing like this.
Asif Ali Zardari had done it, sir.
Yeah, correct. So that is the only saving grace. Otherwise, military should have come in a big way by now. So having said this, there are very serious fault lines, But the only saving grace for Pakistan, as per my understanding, is that the military leadership is actually worshipped. They are the only one, they are the stanchion which is existing, the central theme which is respected by one and all in Pakistan. They are trusted to the hilt. And it is that trust factor which is reposed by a common man on the military, which has given them the freedom of faith. And the freedom is being exploited so much so that military has started indulging in excessive commercial activities which are not coming to the limelight. Military is not doing anything professional today. Military is doing everything non-professional. How long will it last? And how long this particular vacuum which is being created underneath is going to sustain them as a military component is a big question to be answered by them. So having said all this, contradictions are abound. Fault lines, very serious fault lines are there. You have Balochis on one hand, you have Pashtuns. They're demanding. Day before yesterday, there is a video clip which has gone viral, wherein the boundaries of Afghanistan, Duran line, has been extended to join the lines of the boundaries, western boundaries of India, wherein they're showing part of Pakistan occupied Kashmir as part of Afghanistan Emirate. So this is the kind of nuisance. Obviously, nothing is going to move in this direction without the blessings and um, covert participation or guidance by China. So it is a well-known fact. Now, but the issue remains that Pakistan as a nation state cannot exist without the existence of the deep state. When I say deep state, it means army duly supported by ISI. I hope I have answered, if not 100%, at least to larger extent. Back to you, Aadi, please.
Thank you, General Sudhakar, for taking us through that aspect of the Pakistani army. General Dushyant, before I move into the next question, a comment from you about the Pakistani military private limited, sir.
Well, Sudhakar has described what I have formulated a cartoon a few days back, which I think I shared with you. I would like you to share that cartoon. Yeah, I would like you to share that cartoon. It explains the entire functioning of Pakistan. Pakistan is a hybrid governance state. Now, this is a statement which I am making, which is cyclic in nature. There are four major components of this. There is a civilian political hierarchy or political arena. There is a military domain. The third is the militants who are there, and fourth, of course, is the public. Now, all these four people combine together and come together with some form of governance or the other. Constitutional aspects apart, Pakistan Army has realized that ruling directly was never going to be beneficial to them in their long-term image. So to remain holier than the thou, they have created this kind of a environment and this kind of a governance where they prop up political parties to rule, and then they fail them, and then they say, look, we said that the civilians can't get hold of governance, and then again they will prop up another party. At the same time, they start playing with the militants for either internal politics or for external politics. I mean, this is very telling statement I am making. Assassination of Benazir Bhutto is an example of internal use of terrorists. At times, these terrorists turn back on the military also, like towards the end when Musharraf was ruling. He was coming under a number of attacks by the Lashkar-e-Jhangvi, etc. So he promptly banned Lashkar-e-Jhangvi and showed to the world as though he's going after the militants. But his core group of militants, which is JEM, LET, Huji, HM, they remain totally bound by the establishment or the ISI, whichever name you want to give them, or the Pak army. So this kind of a first prop up, then make it fail, and then prop up another one. In all this, the army comes out as the saving grace of the country. That if we weren't there, Pakistan would just fall apart. So Pakistan army thrives in chaos. More the chaos, better it is for Pakistan army to project itself as the force which can hold this country together. So it is the Pakistan army which has to be broken. And not even my earlier statement of people rising up, yes, that takes a lot of effort for people to rise up. Iranian revolution doesn't happen on a regular basis. They happen with a lot of internal pressure, then only people rise. Most of the people follow the free rider concept, let somebody else do it. Once the things goes beyond a breaking point, then I will join that movement. So Pakistan, if you also take back historically your mind, the true civilian rule was only prevalent when Pakistan army was at its lowest in 1971, when it was humiliated. And Mr. Bhutto could rule like a civilian prime minister for good over 6-7 years. Ultimately, the Pakistan army was his nemesis, and it was there that the Pakistan army used a direct method of assassination. Since then, they have learned their lesson, and they are following this the model which I have said. Pakistan Army is a hybrid governance model.
That's a very telling statement. So I must say, what is being said in Pakistan today is that the Pakistani army is quite embarrassed with Imran Khan. But you're giving a totally new spin to it, that they've probably brought him in as an incompetent buffoon to show the world that, listen, this is what happens when you trust these guys. We are the only ones who can. That's a very telling statement, I must say, and that's also actually further legitimization. It's a further step towards legitimizing the control of the army within the nation. And I think all of us will agree that till the time that is there, normalcy is quite difficult.
I have to say that.
Sir, another actually thing I'd like to mention here is, you spoke about the people rising up, and there's one very funny anecdote that came out of Pakistan, that any protest that needs to happen before the March end. उसके बाद थोड़ी गर्मी ज़्यादा हो जाती है, protest करना, long march नहीं हो पाता. So that's something that was said by one of the leaders in the PDM in an open jalsa sort of a thing that they call. So that's a very interesting, note. Coming to you, General Sudhakarji, the biggest problem that I see in Pakistan today is the religious indoctrination that has been, brought into place. The hatred towards the so-called Yahud and Hanud and all that thing which is there in the society, and it's pretty harsh, as a matter of fact, and with the kind of attacks that we've seen on that poor Sri Lankan man, and recently again another person who was stoned to death for just a blame of insulting the Quran. And finally speaking, the second gentleman who got stoned to death was a Muslim himself. So that's a little weird. That religious indoctrination has also been based as an anti-India sentiment and has been cultivated by the army, right from Zia downwards, everybody. It is also affecting their investments today. The religious groups are attacking the Pakistan's pride, CPEC, and so on and so forth. And we also saw that when the Saudis kind of loosened up a little bit, the Pakistanis went ahead and protested against that. Yeah. How do you see the religious indoctrination preventing Pakistan from actually moving forward?
You see, Aadi, that's a very interesting question you have asked. It's got a regional connotation as also a global interpretation to the whole thing. Just very quickly, take a very short snapshot environmental scan to the west of Pakistan, what is happening. We all are aware of how the situation in Yemen unfolding presently. But the West Asia continues to witness turbulence because of the Shia-Sunni turmoil. Okay, it will continue forever. But one radical thing I would say in a positive direction, which is panning out, is the Abraham Accord, which has recently been signed, I think 13th August 2020, between Israel and a couple of other countries, UAE. And interestingly, day before yesterday, if I'm not wrong, the chief of the army staff of Saudi Arabia had visited India. It's an event which perhaps to my reckoning has taken place for the first time after a long, long gap. For the first time. That time gap, I don't know, but a lot of people say it's a long gap. But that is not a mere visit. It's a very strong messaging which has taken place. What DGISPR has been doing by launching a very calibrated and pompous kind of information warfare and non-kinetic, non-contact kind of warfare, propaganda against India, resorting to all kinds of things. But this visit has given out a strong message. And mind you, he did not stop over Pakistan. He didn't actually go to Pakistan. He went back to Saudi Arabia. Having said that, Saudi Arabia also is one of the very countries. In fact, the Wahhabism culture, that is the epicenter of Wahhabism, the Sunni Muslim epicenter. This is the same country. The leadership in Saudi Arabia has announced inclusion of Sanskrit as a language, as also study of Ramayana and Mahabharata in their official curriculum, in the academic syllabus. So what I'm coming to is, while there is an element of extremism as a response to your question in Pakistan, that extremism, despite being Islamic Republic, there is also a pressure on the governance of Pakistan building up gradually to orientate themselves towards a more liberal form of democracy. This is one part, as per my understanding. There is also internal pressure within multiple stakeholders. Multiple stakeholders, when I talk, you see the international study of, I'll just give you the figures which I have here. Out of 67, out of the Center for Strategic and International Studies, the number of active terrorist groups, I think I borrowed this data from the article written by General Dushman. This is the statistics from 1980. It says out of 67 registered terrorist organizations, there are 12 organizations which are active and operational in Pakistan. There are many more. Imran Khan himself has gone to say on record there are 50 terrorist organizations which are attacking Pakistan in an interview to CNN. But here I have got specific, the real solid agencies who are threatening Pakistan. Now, out of these 12, there are 5 which are looking towards India. Lashkar-e-Toiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed happen to be out of this 5. Why am I bringing out this issue? I am bringing out this issue is that when you talk about the terrorism in Pakistan, without which the non-state actor is an instrument of the deep state. The deep state philosophy or the concept, it outlines 6 important factors. One of the factors is the existential threat, India as an existential threat. Number 2, Punjab is going to continue to be the epicenter. The center of Pakistan is going to be Punjab. Number 3, employment or use of non-state actors as strategic resources. Next point they have is something like, Pakistan to be Islamized. Timelines are not coming out, but these are the points which are relevant and important. And the formation of alliances with other Muslim majority nations. Which are the majority nations? The GCC, when they turned their neck initially after independence, when they actually showed their backside to India and turned their head towards the West, the same West is actually turning their face away from Pakistan today. There is no one, none of the countries, even the OICs, are not talking in favor of Pakistan. Just look back when the surgical strike took place after the Uri incident, as also the Balakot surgical precision strike that we had undertaken. When the issue was raised in OIC, not a single country supported Pakistan out of 57 nation states in the OIC. Now, similarly, what I'm coming to is that when I got talking to in an answer, trying to find an answer to your question, this gentleman, he gave me a very good way forward. So what is it that actually should inspire or stimulate our thought process, thinking on behalf of Pakistan? If Pakistan genuinely wants to improve, then it has to focus on the following issues with utmost sincerity, which is very, very doubtful. It may not happen. But well, if they have, for the first time, they have thought about an offer of peace and no war offered to India for 100 years, well, this could be also a first thought. So what does the gentleman, he's an expert in the subject, he says, until unless Pakistan develops and adopts an independent and vibrant judiciary, Pakistan cannot get out of this labyrinth they had trapped themselves in. Number 2, a versatile, educated civil society is a must. All the educated people of Pakistan, they don't stay in Pakistan, they go out of Pakistan. Third and most important point, he said, a true, genuine, and sincere constitutional democracy will be the backbone which they can insulate or immunize themselves from the impact and the effect of the deep state. And last point, of course, he says, uniform, as long as the army is at the center stage, no improvement can take place. And finally, to get over the impact of the army, Pakistan has to go through a kind of a revolution. It has to be a civilian revolution. Until that revolution takes place, Pakistan cannot break out of the current impasse that it is going through. Back to you, please, Aadi.
Sir, I think, General Dushyant sir, why don't you, share a little light before I move on to the next.
I will share 2 quick comments on what Sudhakar has said. He's more or less conformed to what I am saying, that the people will have to rise to break this form of governance. For that, to me, seems as of now very, very remote possibility. Let me quickly add why. And the reason is that Pakistan was basically created based on the Maududi's thought of Islamization, right? Uh, that did not really gain major traction in Pakistan, as Muslim League almost never won any election in Pakistan. However, that thought process of Islamic thought process was based on two schools, Barelvi and the Deobandi.
Right.
Till that was happening, Pakistan was a fairly moderate society. I remember in our joint services together across abroad, a number of people used to drink and behave like what the Indian Army officers are. But with the Mujahids being utilized by the US to gain control of Afghanistan from the Russians, and Pakistan becoming the center of that entire mechanization, with refugees from Afghanistan coming in, Mujahid hubs being made, Wahhabism started spreading in Pakistan. It is this Wahhabism which has now gained so much of strength, internal strength in Pakistan, that it is preventing the moderates. Let me share who are the moderates today left in the country. These are basically some Sunni Muslims who are, especially among the Gujarati Memons, Chinoets from Punjab. These are the few groups which are still, you can say, they are moderates, essentially because they are from the trader community. Right? Rest, everyone else is by and large swinging towards either an anti-India two-nation theory format or support for the Wahhabism, and that is from where the militants also draw their strength. So till this nexus gets broken, I think that revolution is not likely to take place. I feel ideological revolution is required for Pakistan. That's my comment on how to change Pakistan, or how will Pakistan change. How will this ideological revolution take place? There has to be a counter ideology stronger than Wahhabism, which must start taking root in Pakistan.
And the
And
time is
for
now, sir.
and for that to happen, there has to be certain triggers. These triggers are: economy has to start failing, China has to stop giving that active support, lifeline support, I call it. And the third is the intelligentsia, the people who are going abroad, have to start now uh, talking in much more louder voices. People will have to generate steam inside Pakistan, remain in Pakistan to create that counter ideological revolution. A very, very big ask. Who will bell the cat into Pakistan?
I
Thank you.
think you've brought out some impossibilities that are very difficult for anybody to picture in Pakistan, sir. And when you mention China, so General Dushyant, one thing that comes to mind is, and you also said that they've kept them on life support.
Yeah.
I'd say that they're beyond that. It's that COVID ward with the ventilator tube down the throat. But having said that, they still feed them whatever is required for that country to go forward, and we see that happening across the world, from the IMF still feeding Pakistan to the World Bank still giving loans and so on and so forth. And this is happening at a beck and call of some major power in the world, and we all know who that is. Having said that, their image around the world has become that of a beggar, and that's something which is being seen with the recent visit to Imran Khan. And I say that with all humility, and I don't want to make a joke about it, because it's a very serious situation. People are in dire straits, and uh, the enmity with the army and militancy aside, human beings are still human beings. Um, we saw that the Imran Khan, in his visit to China, was not able to even secure $1 million, and that's something that the Chinese gave to the Argentinians, with the Argentinian president coming there. That also was not given to Pakistan. Now he's running to Russia in the worst possible time, where all the eyes are on Russia and everybody's kind of got a gun to Russia's head. Mr. Imran Khan lands up there and wants to take some money from him. So what I'm trying to get to is the diplomatic isolation, coupled with financial crisis and a life support system that keeps feeding them, one somewhere from China, somewhere from here, there. Does Pakistan or its establishment or anybody in that country realize that they're on life support, or is it just the factor that they have the nuclear weapons, which is the crown jewels of Pakistan, which they know are going to sustain them for as long as they wish to?
I think Pakistan is operating in a VUCA zone. It's vulnerable, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, right? And I had said that Pakistan army as such loves such situations. Because it's in a VUCA, people who are watching Pakistan are also uncomfortable because it is unpredictable. So I don't think anyone wants Pakistan imploding. That's the biggest threat which they are trying to prevail upon the people who matter as far as Pakistan is concerned. And you're right, the nuclear angle is something which they keep playing upon. Especially in the Muslim world, they are the only country, Islamic country in the world who possess nuclear weapons thanks to China. Thanks to China, I would put it very bluntly there. Thanks to China, they have the nuclear weapon with them. Iran is still a long way to go before they can claim to have anything near a nuclear weapon. So, therefore, their importance remains in the Islamic world. And it is because of this reason that Saudi Arabia still gave them a loan at 3%. Right? So, therefore, there are people who are sustaining them based on whatever be their reasons. The Russians don't want the Americans to come back again into this region. So they would like, so that's why he went to Russia. The Chinese won't like their BRI Eurasian project to fail. As such, the Chinese are worried because they had the dream of going through Ukraine up to Europe as far as their BRI was concerned. Now, you have the Pakistanis unstable, you have the Ukrainian area unstable. The Chinese are a worried lot. Unless the Russians get something in return, withdrawal for them is also a very difficult prospect. So Pakistan is liking this situation, and that is why the Prime Minister is going around with a begging bowl. I'm sure he will succeed. Yes, what we should do to ensure that uh, things become better as far as Indo-Pak relations are concerned is a separate question, and that needs a lot of deliberation. But my two-line answer to this would be strengthen yourself. If India strengthens itself to a level where Pakistan, as such, Pakistan doesn't matter to us, but we should become strong enough to be a contender in the region and be looking at par with China. Pakistan will automatically start feeling deterred by India. And you can see that happening.
Yeah.
You can see that happening in the last few years. Pakistan has not had the gumption to actually launch a terror attack after Pathankot or sorry, Pulwama. And Pulwama was not a classic attack in the heartland of India, but Pathankot and Mumbai were classic attack in the heartland of India, where the news value is much more higher. So therefore, there has not been a repeat of such a thing. It's not because of only that our security mechanism has improved. It is also because of our comprehensive national power having grown by far. Today, we are the largest growing economy in the world, growing at 9.9 to 10% a year. It's no jokes. The Chinese are behind. Of course, Chinese are already ahead. So it doesn't matter to them if they are growing at 5% or 6%. But the fact of the matter is, our exports in the defense have risen high. We are the 10th now as far as exporting countries are concerned. Now, these are things which are actually indirectly improving our comprehensive national power. My solution to it is, खुद ही को कर बुलंद इतना कि खुदा बंदे से पूछे बता तेरी रजा क्या है. This is the answer to Pakistan's problem.
Absolutely. General Sudhakar sir, although I think General Dushyant has rounded it off very, very well, sir. Still a comment from you about this situation of diplomatic isolation?
I have nothing to add beyond what General Dushyant has beautifully summed up, except for one thing, that on their own they have started focusing on the geo-economics. Perhaps that is the core issue, which it will make or break Pakistan. Pakistan, so far we thought, is a broken nation, but still they are able to sustain. The gold, personal gold, is being now taken advantage of, being capitalized to improve their forex reserve.
Yeah.
Forex reserve having come down to 13.1 or 12.1 billion
yeah.
dollars, which is peanuts. Okay, so and also this year only, this financial year, Pakistan has to the debt servicing is to the tune of 51.6 billion. This is only that much which is officially shared in the open media. Unofficially, I am told it adds on, goes something to a figure of $63 billion for debt servicing alone, plus 26 trillion Pakistan rupees has to be, no, billion rupees has to be paid back to China. That is for the CPEC, the interest amount has to be paid back. Plus, $38 million have to be paid for the loss of lives of the engineers and the workers, Chinese workers, 9 of them who passed away. Likewise, if you add on, the economy itself has started putting pressure on Pakistan to an extent that it may not be appropriate on our part to say that everything is hunky-dory. Certainly not. To me, there are indications of anarchy gradually creeping in. Despite the fact that the army is at the center stage, I may be wrong, but this is what my analysis is. The time has come wherein the army, the Pakistan army, is also started losing the credibility which they had enjoyed since the date of independence. That they used to be taken as a role model. They used to be taken as that nothing wrong can be done by Pakistan army. But the same Pakistan army is into the land estate business, into the brokerage, into the commercial activity. They are doing business. Anything other than army activities, they're into it in a big way. And more so, they're not doing on their own. They're being driven by China to do all this. So, like General Dushyant has very nicely summed up, I would only say if Pakistan wants to actually develop and get out of this particular thick soup, perhaps they need to focus on issues like the human capital. They have to improve on rural connectivity. They have to improve on the business environment. If I have to recommend to the Pakistanis, it's about time that they have to look after this. When I talk about the human capital indicators, as per the 2019 and 2020 Human Development Report, Pakistan index is below average by region and income group. Pakistan is ranking 152, while India is 129. India is no good. Bangladesh is 135, Sri Lanka is 71 out of 189 countries. I'll give you another figure. You have the local roads and transportation network, awful in CPEC regions. Okay, FDI inflows, the World Bank doing business of 2020 report, Pakistan ranks 110, India ranks 63, Nepal is 94, Sri Lanka 99 out of 190 economies. Similarly, for good institutional framework, Pakistan also has to invest time and energy for better political stability. If political stability is not there, the money will not flow. And in percentile, they actually depict with the help of percentile. It is occupies a third percentile for political stability, where 0 is the least desirable and 100 the most desirable rank according to data from the World Governance Indicator. So similarly, if you go on to the other aspects, they are at the bottom of the list or the barometer. So therefore, they need to actually look within, search their soul, find a way forward and the roadmap. Where do they actually want to go ahead as far as the long-term perspective which they have chosen of 100 years? If the 100 years is 2022 plus 100, wherever it takes them to, what is the milestone they are looking at? They want to disappear from the map of the world, or they want to be a progressive, forward-looking nation and a more liberal Islamic kind of a country, which would like to actually develop, keeping in view the quality of life of people of Pakistan, employment opportunities, education standards, health, all these SDI indices must retain the center stage of Pakistan's development matrix. Thank you so much. Back to you, please.
Sir. Thank you, sir. My last question, as a matter of fact, sir, I'd just like to, request you to both comment on the India part of it. One of the biggest things that I notice of India's relations or India's treatment of Pakistan is complete ignorance. We have not bothered. We have not cared about COVID. We are sending supplies to Afghanistan, but nothing has gone to Pakistan. Not one. I don't think one injection has gone to Pakistan from us directly. So that just tells you that we've not really looked at what's happening there. We don't reply to their comments. We don't, as Imran Khan puts it, Modi doesn't take his calls even. So that's one part of it. We've kind of just put them across. You do what you need to. We are doing what we need to. Our focus is our economy development, getting our human capital right. This. Getting our defense and a whole lot of other things. And we've just kept them on the side. We spoke about the fact that Pakistan will have to take a lot of steps to ensure that they can develop the relations with India and this and that. There are just one simple question, sir. Is there an appetite within India? And I'm going to just put it across in two separate things. Within India's public today to accept Pakistan as a country that they would like to have a relation with, point number one. And point number two is, would there be a politician, for example, our current Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, who would like to risk his political capital into a situation like Pakistan, having burnt his fingers? Although a lot of people would say that, India's politicians have this innate quality of wanting to actually sort out things with Pakistan. It's something that has been drilled in them. But in the current disposition in India, to my mind, it's a little, off. So just a short comment from both of you, sir, to close this discussion. General Sudhakar ji, may I request you to start, sir?
A few days back, the Himalayan intelligence channel, something similar sounding channel, came out with a figure that 10 to 15 days back, there were 7,000 Punjabis who had applied to migrate to India. Okay. And within a couple of days, next 3 to 4 days time, following 3-4 days time, the figure had gone up to almost about 20,000 Punjabis. If these figures are to be believed, well, there is an indication of frustration amongst the civilian population in Pakistan itself. Whether they can continue to stay with sustained livelihood or not, it's a million-dollar question. So that itself is answering the question to large an extent. So as far as the appetite is concerned, well, India is known for Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Here is a call that we have to take as a nation of large-heartedness. Here is a nation that there are almost about 1 lakh Punjabis who are in the state of Punjab in the Pakistan, or maybe more than that. There may be a situation wherein rather than looking west, which they looked at at the time of independence, way back in 1947, they may be looking towards the east to come across the line of control and with a begging ball in the hand. In those circumstances, will India not be magnanimous to actually accommodate them? Or should we turn our blind eye towards the Pakistanis who are the very much part of an Akhand Bharat? That is the answer to your question. Please, back to you.
Interesting, sir. General Dushyant, how about you, sir? Appetite within the citizenry? Because we've seen how the citizenry reacts to anti-India sort of comments. We saw how the Hyundai and Kia was literally rubbed in the ground. So there's appetite within the citizenry and appetite within the political leadership.
At the cost of core following of mine, I would like to just highlight two things about the current set of leaders of the country. As part of their agenda, Akhand Bharat has always been a part and parcel of it. Right? Now, it doesn't mean that Akhand Bharat meant that somebody is assimilated into India. But the Indian influence goes there. Right? That is the true meaning of Akhand Bharat. Even Savarkar, the way he defined Hindutva was people residing between Indus and the seas, right? So therefore, that was one. The second is Vasudev Kutumbakam, which he's already said. And the third, a leader of the country who is able to bring peace between India and Pakistan will go down in the history as next to Mahatma Gandhi. That was the reason why Atal Bihari Vajpayee kept trying regularly, failure after failure. He wanted to go down in the history as the prime minister who was able to bring peace to this continent by regularizing the Indo-Pak relations. But having said that, it's a two-way process. Unless there are concessions seen from the other side, this side will not move forward. And the process of ignorance will continue by the current leadership. But it will grab an opportunity. I mean, he went to eat breakfast just for nothing.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. He has the desire, but he must get the environment from the other side. If he gets even substantial, even if it is not a substantial initiative from Pakistan, I think he will encourage it. The current leader will encourage it because he himself would like to go down. Remember, he's a bachelor. He would like to go down in history as a prime minister who made the difference as far as South Asia is concerned. He announced the 10,000, I think, crore rupees as vaccine fund. It was Pakistan which rejected it.
Yeah.
They refused to join the SARC initiative. So this will happen. It's not that we didn't want to give vaccines. It is that Pakistan doesn't want to take it. Because if Pakistan takes it, it will be seen as a violation of the two-nation theory, which they thrive on or they survive on. They feel they will go into a danger if they dump the two-nation theory. I think that the day they decide to dump the two-nation theory, Pakistan will be free of all its problems. Thank you.
I think this has been a very heavy discussion, sir. With regards to Pakistan, normally that's not the case. There are jokes flying around, and it's a very light-hearted conversation because Pakistan today has become, if I may, and for it shouldn't happen to any country for that matter, has become the laughing stock of the world, and especially its political leadership and the so-called Ashrafia and so on and so forth. Even their own expats are laughing at them today because they're not able to figure out which way this country is going. But having said that, this particular discussion gives us an insight as to what is actually wrong at the core root of the country, and that till the time that root is not treated with whatever medicines or whatever is required to be done, it's very difficult. And I personally feel that till the time the Pakistanis have these so-called crown jewels of nuclear weapons, it is going to be very difficult to push them across into any sort of an iota of change, because the easiest thing for them, and I think General Dushyant, you had explained to me this long time ago when we started doing our interviews that the situation of a nuclear blackmail or a nuclear suicide, what they kind of keep on threatening about, will not go from their nature. It's probably a handover each army chief does to the other. Yaar, ye Ramban hai. If there's a problem, use this.
They say we will nuke our own country.
Yeah.
Yes.
If the Indian army goes inside there. So yeah, it's a nuclear suicide is the last resort.
Last resort. So that's something that just tells us, and that's my perspective. And thank you, General Dushyant and General Sudhakar ji, for taking us through a very beautiful rendition of what is one wrong with Pakistan at the core, not the Imran Khan, Sheikh Rashid, and this and that, what we hear all day long in our TV, but the actual core problems in Pakistan. Till next time for another subject, another day, sir. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Aadi.